Hey guys, Matteo here, welcome back to a new video, and today I want to talk about a topic that I think a lot of people are interested in, and I want to talk about why I think, in my opinion, IBIS or EBIS or whatever, image stabilization, is absolutely overrated. And I also want to give you 5 tips to capture more stable footage without the need of stabilized sensor and stabilized lenses. As I mentioned on the autofocus video, if you are a videographer and all you want to do for the rest of your life are weddings and events and parties, and that's absolutely fine. Here I'm talking to aspiring cinematographer, and the reason is very simple. If you are investing in a camera because of the stabilized sensor and image stabilization, and at some point you become really good, then you're gonna jump on a real set and I'm gonna give you an Ursa Mini or an Arri Alexa or a Red camera. I'm wondering what are you gonna do, because neither of those cameras have image stabilized sensor. So you don't want to show up on a set and handle your first Arri Alexa and capture very shaky footage and complaining with the director or the producer because the camera doesn't have image stabilization. You're gonna get fired and very likely you will not be called again. Another thing I wanted to add is that I've been playing around with camera with image stabilization, and does it really matter how stable you are? This stabilized sensor, they never really work at 100%. And in my opinion, even turning it off sometimes doesn't completely fix the problem, because you still have a sensor that moves inside the camera when you shake the camera. Again, a great photography feature, but in my modest opinion, both autofocus or image stabilization shouldn't be a big deal in terms of deciding what camera you're getting. Another point I want to make here, guys, is that we are filmmakers, we are cinematographers. People pay us to capture stable footage and to pull our own focus. So I think that should be one of the basic skills of a camera operator. And that's why I think it's extremely important that aspiring cinematographers, filmmakers that are coming up in these years, they're willing to learn these skills, because this is what makes a camera operator good or bad. With that said, I just don't want to talk about IBIS and why you shouldn't care. I also want to give you 5 important tips on how to capture more stable footage without the needs of stabilized lenses or stabilized sensor. So first tip, I know maybe you already heard about this, but I always want to say it. Maybe this doesn't apply if you own a bigger camera, but if you own a pocket or a mirrorless camera, you want to rig it up, you want to make it a little bit heavier, because having an heavier camera is going to help you quite a bit in capturing stable footage. When the camera is super light, it's gonna be very hard because you don't have that force that pulls down to the ground. So you basically are doing this sort of movement. That's what are gonna cause the micro shaky that you wanna avoid. If you start putting a cage on it, a V-mount battery, a monitor on it, the camera is gonna be a little bit heavier. It doesn't have to be a huge rig, also because this can go against the benefit of having a small camera and a small form factor, so that's totally fine. Second tip, get an Easyrig. It doesn't have to be the Vario 5 that costs $5,000. I have the Mini Max that it costs about 1,000 euros, $1,000, and it works great with my Ursa Mini Pro and my Blackmagic Pocket with the Leica R on it. Keep in mind, I don't always use an Easyrig, because an Easyrig is gonna also limit it a little bit in the movements, but it could be a great tool and a great option, especially if you're filming a lot of static shots or you wanna give a little movement, a little push in. I think Easyrig is an amazing tool that any filmmaker should have. So tip number 3, and this is not always true. I mean, it's not that you're always gonna shoot in 48 frames per second or 50 frames per second, but I can tell you, if you're doing a travel thing or if you're doing a brand video with some B-roll or a commercial, and you know, I very often use, especially when I do product shot, 48 frames per second, because that's gonna allow me to be handheld and to be extremely smooth. So when you shoot a little bit slow motion, your footage is gonna look more stable. Of course, if you're shooting a feature film or a short film or something that needs to be shot in 24p, this is not gonna apply, but I just wanted to throw it out there. So tip number 4, and for this one I have my Ursa Mini Pro right here. As you can see, it's fully rigged. And for this one, of course, you can apply to the Ursa Mini, to the Arri, to the Red, to any camera you want. It's gonna be easier on a cinema camera with the viewfinder, but it can also be a pocket with the battery in the back and this kind of stuff. But what I think is very important to get stable footage is find a third point of contact with your camera. What I mean by that, so let's say you have your camera right here, and how I handle it, I keep it right here with a hand at the bottom. Maybe I have one hand on the top, or if I'm pulling the focus, I have the follow focus right here. At that point, the camera is pretty stable because this camera is heavy. But how do I make the footage more stable? And this is what I mean with third point of contact. I use, for example, this part of my body. So in that way, I have a 1, 2, and 3. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna press against my chest right here. And this is gonna make all the footage I'm capturing way more stable. Now, it can be the shoulder also. So you can maybe sometimes with the pocket, I pull it right here when I'm doing a pretty high angle shot, or sometimes I just pull it down here. So I use my belly for a super low angle. 1, 2, and I press it against my belly, and then I move my body, and I try to get those stable clips that you saw me taking in those behind the scene video. So I also use the viewfinder. So that's another one, and I think it's gonna help you getting even more stable footage. So in this case, one hand right here, one hand right here. I use the shoulder as well, and then the viewfinder right here, and I press the camera against my eye, and that's gonna allow the camera to be pretty much locked in. So hand, or follow focus, hand, shoulder, or just the eye, and I just press it against the eye. So if there's a shoulder and the eye, at that point you have like almost 4 points of contact, so which is great. Right now with the Blackmagic Pro and the Blackmagic Pocket 6K G2, you have the option to get a viewfinder. I'm sure it's not gonna be as good as this one, but it could be a very interesting part of the rig, because once you have your camera, you press it against your eye, so you have a 3 point of contact with the camera, and that's gonna be much easier to get stable footage rather than just looking at the monitor, especially if you don't want to rig it up with a cage, V-mount, monitor, and that kind of stuff. Tip number 5, training. Get a camera without image stabilization, without autofocus is possible, even better, and just start to operate the camera. Put a wide angle lens on it if you want it, because it's gonna be much easier, of course, to not having shaky footage. Don't get me wrong, with a 50mm, I'm also having a little bit of trouble. That's why I often use the Easyrig. And try to exercise, because this is your gym. This is where you're gonna get better. You have to operate a camera, you have to shoot content, you have to go out there, pull your own focus, do a mistake. It's fine to get shaky footage, absolutely no problem with that, but you have to start training yourself, and you have to start operating a camera in the right way and as a real camera operator. I was not born with very still hands, like nobody, I think. It's something that I learned during the years, because of course when I started I have a 5D Mark II, there was no image stabilization, and when I moved to the original Pocket in 2013, guys, I was shooting corporate video, I was shooting events, I was shooting wedding with no autofocus and with no image stabilization, and I was able to get in footage. And not just me, plenty of other filmmakers. So I get it that technology is coming in and it might be helpful, but I do think that it's really important to know how to do this kind of stuff ourselves without the help of the technology. And trust me guys, I much rather see some shakiness here and there rather than seeing those IBIS blobbing effects that I see all the time. So that was it. I hope you guys liked the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know how do you like to operate a camera. And again guys, I talk about this in depth in my online course. It's a 10-hour course where I talk about business, cinematography breakdown, color grading, archive, de-aging, and all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, I have a big sales going on now. So use code FOLD30 at checkout and get 30% off on my online course at BroderickAcademy.com. Again, thank you so much for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.